This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Go to our website at wdtatpodcast.com and click on support to learn how you can be part of this effort to learn how to have better conversations, increase compassion, and build bridges, not walls. You can make a one-time donation or become a patron for as little as $1 a month and receive patron-only benefits. Thanks to all of our patrons at any level for your support. We really couldn't do this without you. Now let's get into the interview. In this episode, I talked to Ammar Ilyas about being Muslim, the 5 pillars of Islam, and I confess that I need more jihad in my life. Welcome to the podcast where we talk about things we're not supposed to, learn how to have difficult conversations, and talk to people about what makes them different. This is the We Don't Talk About That with Lucas Land podcast, where we do talk about that with me, Lucas Land.
It's never the right place or time. It's imperceptible to the eye. It's never the right place or time.
My guest today is Ammar Ilyas. He is the host of the Let's Agree to Disagree podcast. Welcome to the podcast and assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Thank you so much, Lucas, for that lovely introduction. And I'm very pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I don't speak Arabic, but I do know a few greetings from Arabic, and that's one of them. So I wanted to share that with you.
That's amazing.
Which kind of points out why we're talking today.
Right.
You're a Muslim, and we're going to talk about Islam and what a little bit about Islam and your story, and maybe help our listeners understand a little bit more about who Muslims are, Islam, and really just you and your own experience. So tell us first a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you are in the world, and what you do.
Okay, sweet. So my name is Ammar Ilyas. I am from Sri Lanka, but I live in Saudi Arabia. I was born in Sri Lanka, but I came to Saudi when I was 2 months old. I was born into a Muslim family, and something that I think, in terms of a story, I don't really have a story per se, because I've always been a Muslim, but my dad is a very religious person, so he always brought me up in a very with religious values and that sort of thing, you know. And from a very early age, he educated me about the values of Islam and, you know, how to be a good Muslim, and really brought me up with the fundamentals and the basics, which I have sort of carried on to my adult life to this day. And so I was born into a Muslim family. I'm in a Muslim country, so yeah, my entire life I've always been surrounded by Muslim people. Granted, there are non-Muslims in this country, but it's not a lot, you know. But well, if here's an interesting story is I was brought up till I was 20 years old in Saudi Arabia, right? I've lived here my whole life. So when I was, as you know, Lucas, when for my higher studies, for my university, I decided to fly to Malaysia, and Malaysia is a much more diverse country than Saudi is, and Islam is one of the main religions over there as well. But you also have Hinduism and also I'm not sure what the Chinese religion is, but there are people that are following that with Christianity, Catholicism, and that sort of thing. It's more diverse than Saudi, right? And having been exposed to these different people really taught me a skill and something about it really taught me some values about Islam, which I did not learn in my 20 years in Saudi Arabia, you know, and like being comfortable in your own religion and trying to to be really proud of who you are and where you're from and what you represent, which I was very anxious to do when I first went to Malaysia, because I was from Saudi Arabia. So when I told people I'm from Saudi Arabia, they have this taboo image in their head. So I really was never open to talk about what Islam is and what life in Saudi Arabia is like. So I always held back. And when I came across people that were really open about where they came from and their country and the religion, it sort of inspired me to do the same as well. So that is a value that I took from my experience abroad, which I did not gain living in a Muslim country my whole life.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, tell us a little bit at first, what are some of the major beliefs and tenets of Islam? I know I know a little bit because I've studied theology, but so you could kind of explain what the 5 pillars are, and then some of the basics about Islam for the listeners.
Right. So before I do this, I have to say that I am not an expert in Islam. I'm merely a follower. So if I do make a mistake, we will probably correct it when we're editing it. I'll inform you, Lucas, about it, so you can probably edit it somehow. So I do apologize if I do make any Muslims listening out there. I'm really sorry if I screw up the explanation. But so as a Muslim, you are required to believe in the 5 pillars of Islam, we call it, which is basically the fundamentals to one's belief. And the first pillar is what we call in Arabic, which is the Shahada, which is basically the testament to our religion. It's basically there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the final messenger of Allah. And as a Muslim, these are, you could say, like 2 criteria that you have to believe in if you are part of the religion. You have to believe that there is no other God except for Allah, and Muhammad is the final messenger of God. And this is what we call the Shahada. And the second pillar of Islam is what we call Salah, which translates loosely into praying. As Muslims pray 5 times a day. We have the dawn prayer, the noon, the afternoon, the evening, and the night prayer. And this is something which we Muslims around the globe practice on a day-to-day basis. And people, something that was very interesting is when I went to Malaysia, people often saw these 5 daily prayers as something huge and something which is very difficult to do. Granted, it is difficult for many people around the world, but living in a Muslim country where the prayers are done on loudspeakers, so you can hear it everywhere. I was really blessed to be brought up in that environment where performing the 5 daily prayers was sort of integral into our day-to-day routines, so it was never a very taboo thing. So I've always been able to do this without any problems ever since I was a child. And any Muslim will tell you that really praying 5 times a day is not something which is very difficult, because it doesn't really take a lot of time. And it's a very interesting experience. I've tried to get my friends who are not Muslim to pray with me, and they visited the mosques and that sort of thing. So it's been a very wonderful experience, bringing them into something that I hold closely to my heart, And so that is the second pillar. The third pillar is Saum. Saum is basically, I'm sure you've heard the month of Ramadan, which is fasting. So Muslims around the world, we fast for 1 month for 30 days or for 29 to 30 days, depending on the moon. We fast from sunrise to sundown for 30 days straight, where we don't drink, we don't eat, we don't engage in sexual activities, we don't swear, do backbite, that sort of thing. We really try to hone all of our senses, our mind, our bodies, our souls to becoming closer with our God and with our religion and becoming better Muslims. So this is 1 month where we dedicate ourselves to the acts of worship and try to become better Muslims and that sort of thing. And so this is Saum, which is the third pillar. The fourth pillar is Zakah. Zakah is basically charity, where as Muslims, I think the percentage is, as Muslims every year, we are supposed to give 2.5% of our wealth to the poor. And there's actually a whole lot of technicalities involved with this, which I'm not very well versed with. But essentially, we believe that as Muslims, one of our core values is to helping the poor as much as we would like to be helped, And there are many great resources online and YouTube videos where your audience can go and check to learn more about these pillars of Islam, where they would do a much better job than I am doing currently at the moment. But yeah, so we really do believe that helping the poor is something which is very important and something which we try to do every year. If the bare minimum is to give 2.5% of our wealth to the poor. And lastly, the last pillar is Hajj. The Hajj is, which can be loosely translated to pilgrimage, where all Muslims around the world, if they have the means, they are obligated to come to Saudi Arabia, to Mecca, which is you could say the Islamic capital, and perform pilgrimage at least once in their lifetimes. And it is a huge event which attracts billions of. It's not an event, but it's a huge time during the year which attracts billions of Muslims around the world to come to Saudi Arabia and perform Hajj. And if I'm not mistaken, it's a 5 or 6 days journey, where they it's basically where they try to get close in with their religion, with God, and improve their spiritual beings and that sort of thing. So these are the sort of 5 pillars that every Muslim believes in. And yeah. I probably did a horrible job at explaining that. So I will, Lucas, what I'll do is I'll send you some
We're not going to hold
which you can probably link in the show notes, where your listeners can,
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, don't worry about it. We won't hold you to representing all of Islam. I mean, I know I'm asking. I'm kind of asking you to a little bit, but we won't hold anything against you. Yeah, send those links, because I think that'll help people.
Yeah, I'll do
go a little deeper in understanding. One of the things that as you were sharing the 5 pillars, that I thought about when you were talking about the daily prayers, in the U.S., where Muslims, with our religious liberty, have the right and to do that, and that happens at work, right, for a lot of people, and they have to pray at work. I was thinking about how for a lot of Americans, for U.S. citizens, that seems really strange, right? I mean, if they haven't experienced it before.
Yeah.
If they had a coworker who got out their prayer rug and faced towards Mecca and prayed, the first time they probably would be like, "Oh wow, that's strange." Like, it's so strange to them. Yeah. But what I was able to think about, because you were talking about growing up in Saudi Arabia and how you have done this your whole life, and that it's really not very hard. It's just normal to you that you stop and do prayers at all of these points during the day. That's just part of your day. That's not anything weird or strange, right? Yeah. It's just what you do. And how that's so different from a lot of, from my experience and a lot of people's experience in the U.S. And so when we see it, we're like, oh, wow, that's weird. Why are they doing that? That's not normal. Yeah. But for Muslims, it is normal. And it would probably feel really strange to you not to do that, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's something, I don't know. When I was like sort of exposed to this like this sort of side, where people were coming to me and telling me like, don't you find this difficult? And I was like, what's difficult about this? It's like it's at that point, like living 20 years in a country that that sort of like lives by the 5 daily prayers, it sort of became like involuntary and something which I do on autopilot mode. So I was really surprised that people actually saw it that way. And it was really from a Muslim's perspective, it became it's sort of wholesome in a way, because when you hang out with non-Muslim friends, I was very anxious to talk about my religion when I first went to Malaysia, right? But when I sort of opened up and people really saw how I live my life and how much my religion means to me, anytime I missed a daily prayer, they would remind me themselves, and it's at first it became like, it was probably like strange for them to see me pray 5 times a day and that sort of thing. But after a while, they became accustomed to it, and they went out of their way to make me feel comfortable, because like in Saudi Arabia, you have this. I'm sure you know what halal foods are, right? So it's this thing where you're not allowed to eat pork, and those Muslims are not allowed to eat pork or drink alcohol and that sort of thing. And so my friends would go out of their way to make sure that if we went for dinner, for example, like, is that place halal? And one time I remember we switched to like 5 different restaurants searching for a halal food, and I felt so guilty in a way because I'm making their lives difficult for them. But for them, they wanted to do it because they see, like, this is the way I live my life, and they want to accommodate me. So this was something which is very wholesome. And I realized that as a Muslim, you don't really have to be that afraid to talk about your religion and show how much it means to you, because people are very receptive and very kind, more often than not. And it made my life really easy and more wholesome in a way.
Yeah. The other one, the only other phrase I do know in Arabic is from the first pillar, and that is La ilaha illa Allah.
Yes. La ilaha illallah,
and it just means there is no God but God.
Yes.
And when I was in college, in undergrad, our theology professor, we learned about different religions as part of our curriculum. And I remember really distinctly one day he was teaching about Islam, and he made the whole class say La ilaha illa Allah together, right. And then he said to all of us, okay, now you're all Muslims because you've confessed that,
I saw that
there is only one God.
Right.
And I think that made a lot of people uncomfortable, like, wait, I'm not Muslim, right. But so yeah, I would love to learn Arabic, but I speak a few languages, but none of them have a different alphabet, and I feel like that would be Arabic would be tricky, but I would love to learn more.
Well, actually,
one of these days.
I'm probably in the same boat as you because I've lived in Saudi my whole life, but I cannot speak Arabic fluently.
Really?
Yeah, it's because as I said, I was always exposed to the same type of people. So my friends and I, we've always grown up in sort of like you could say tribalism, like we talked about before. And I was always exposed to the same type of people. I was never exposed to Arabs, authentic Arabs, and, never hung out with them. So I never really got the chance to learn Arabic properly. I can speak Arabic, but not fluently, and I cannot hold a conversation in Arabic, which is very unfortunate because I've always wanted to learn Arabic, but never got around doing it.
So what language did you grow up speaking?
So my mother tongue is Tamil, and I speak English to my friends, at home, and I studied in English here. So, but at home I speak in Tamil, but outside the rest of the country speaks in Arabic. So, right. But I wish I had learned it when I was a kid, but I never did.
Sure, yeah. Oh, so, Ammar, what are some of the things that people believe about Islam that are wrong? What are some of those myths that you probably hear a lot?
Well, one thing that many people thought when I went to Malaysia is that all Arabs are Muslims, and that all Muslims are Arabs in a way, And like I had one friend, like I live in Saudi Arabia, right? So they sort of associate Saudi Arabia to Islam, and they say like Saudi Arabia is Islam, So when I first went to Malaysia and I started meeting people and socializing, one guy who is a very good friend of mine today, he came up to me and he asked me, like, in Saudi Arabia, like, is it true that you go around in camels and you don't have cars and that sort of thing? And I was very taken aback, like that it was very obvious in my head, like that has to be a troll comment, but he was serious and he was really asking that. And I realized the level of ignorance that people have all around the world, when it comes to Saudi Arabia because of the media. And so there are many weird myths that I would say that many people have, which was really fun to hear and very shocking to hear at first. But on a more serious note, I would think that I don't know, like I've never been exposed to it because, as I said, I've always lived in a Muslim country. Do you have any myths that you've heard and that you've had personally that you could that you've always had about the religion, or that you could clarify?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I'm not sure what, I'll have to think about which ones I have, but the things I hear,
what you hear.
Yeah, the things I hear are like that that Islam is a violent religion. I think there's a lot of Americans that have that conception because of extremists and because of terrorism. So I don't know, maybe you can address that, because I think that's probably the biggest thing that in the West that people think.
Yeah, I have to be honest, I've never personally experienced this sort of stereotype, me personally, because I think it's predominantly exists in the West, because of the whole situation there and the extremists and that sort of thing. And to those people, all I have to say is just to look at Muslims, all around them, all around the world. Like you have I think it's like 1.6 million people living in the US who are Muslim, and they don't go about blowing up streets and shopping malls and that sort of thing, right? Like everyone's just living their own life. They're normal people, and it's just like a selective group of people that really take these verses in the Quran, which is our holy book, out of context, and they make it their whole lives basically, and they commit these vile acts of terror and that sort of thing. And you have to know something very important, which is that in Islam you have the Quran, right, which is the holy book, and then you have something which is called the Hadith. The Hadith is basically the life and the doings of our prophet. We consider our last prophet, Prophet Muhammad, as the perfect role model to live towards and strive towards, right? And we have books which are called the Hadith, which have been compiled from his life, and which contains his sayings and his life, how he used to do things and that sort of thing. And one of the things that he said, which is this is not a hadith, this is a verse in the Quran, which is that there is a verse in the Quran which says that if you kill one person unjustly, it is as if you've killed the whole of humanity. And if you save one person, it is as if you have saved the whole of humanity. So that is the importance of, that is the value that Islam places on one person's life. So when you have a verse like that in our book, how can Muslims be terrorists, and how can Islam teach Muslims to be violent and kill other people and that sort of thing? These verses, which I'll be honest, which these people take out of context, it is not something which you can just peel off the book and make it your whole life. It's the science of what the Quran means and what the Quran stands for is vast, and there are many scholars of Islam that impart wisdom upon the rest of the Muslims, like really educating them what Islam is talking about and what Islam it really is. And it's very clear once you start educating yourself on what Islam really is about, that you come to realize how much these people have just like strain away from the religion and sort of like started practicing their own, essentially, because Islam doesn't advocate for blowing up themselves and killing people and committing acts of terror and that sort of thing, it couldn't be further away from what Islam stood for, and it's just like you really have to think about like how the Muslims around you are living. Are they really sketchy people, or are they normal people going to school and going to work and trying to make a better life for their family? That's basically the sense of it.
Yeah. Well, and that, we just the episode where we talked about our respective podcasts, we talked a lot about getting to know people who are different than you and how that changes things. And so that's, I hear that in what you're saying, that we see things in the media in the West, especially, that depict certain stereotypes of Muslims, and so then we're scared, we're afraid, we're fearful, but then many people don't know any Muslims, and they don't get to know people, and people in the US, like you said, there's 1.6 million Muslims. You have neighbors, in my town there's a mosque, but I don't know anybody. I've never visited the mosque, and I don't know anybody. So, I have work to do to get to know them, even though I don't have that stereotype. It does take a little extra work to reach out and get to know people. Yeah. But it makes a difference. It makes a big difference in how you think about people who are Muslim. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, like when you think about like reaching out to Muslims, I do understand that it can be nerve-wracking. Like it's not an easy thing to reach out to strangers and like get to know them personally and see what they do. But we are living in the internet age, the information age. It really, you can, there are tons of clips on YouTube that really portray the life of a Muslim. And if you really want to see what life in Saudi Arabia is like, you can take video clips of the prayers in Mecca, which is the holy city, and the second holy city, which is Medina. In Saudi Arabia, you can see what the mosque is like. You can see what the people are like. You can see so many things through YouTube itself, which would sort of dismantle all the most of the stereotypes, or some stereotypes that you've had about the country, about the religion, and that sort of thing. So if you really can't reach out to Muslims and really can't visit a mosque there, try doing it from the comfort of your couch, through YouTube, and start reading about things. So it's really, it's something that I would love to. I personally, if a non-Muslim came to me and asked me about religion, like, you would have probably made my day, because I would love to talk to that person and really try to understand, what their opinions are about Islam and that sort of thing. So if you do want to give yourself a challenge, try reaching out to any Muslim and try really asking them about the religion, and I'm sure they will be more than happy to talk to you about it.
Yeah. The other thing that comes to mind is the term that I think a lot of people in the West have heard is jihad, and that this is holy war.
Right.
And could you explain what jihad is and what it means? Because I think that's a thing that a lot of people don't understand very well.
Okay.
Or have stereotypes of that as well.
Right. So jihad is an Arabic word which means sacrifice, right? And what people really link the word to is sacrifice your life for your religion, so I'm going to go blow myself up so I can go to paradise, right? Which is a completely out of context definition. The word jihad, when you talk about sacrifice, right, it's about, for us Muslims, it's about the little sacrifices that you make on a daily basis, So in our religion, like with all religions, there are things that you can do and there are things that you can't do, right? This is common across all religions. So if you live in the West, for example, right, you have like, if you compare life in Saudi Arabia versus life in the West, life in Saudi Arabia is much more conditioned to living an ideal Muslim life. Correct, compared to the US, because US is much more diverse than Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia is literally, you can say, like, the capital of Islam is here, which is Mecca and Medina. And so when let's say you live in the US and you are a young teenager, and in Islam, dating is not a common thing, if you go by the text of the religion, the dating is not a common thing. But in the US, in the West, it's completely normal, right? Like, people date in high school and that sort of thing. So if you want to follow your religion and you want to be a proper Muslim, these sacrifices that you make, like not going to the club with your friends or not drinking alcohol, because even though it's so normalized, this is literally jihad. This is sacrifice for your religion, for the sake of your religion, because religion means so much to you personally, because religion means so much to you, and you really want to follow the message of Islam, and you want to be a good Muslim because you've been brought up that way. So these small sacrifices that you make, this is jihad. If you consider someone that has reverted back to Islam and become a new Muslim, converted from some other religion to Islam, they will have to sacrifice so many things in their life, correct? Granted, this is not really like today I'm not Muslim, tomorrow I'm going to do everything, I'm going to change my life 360. That is not how it usually works, but there is a gradual process to this, right? But when you go through this process of becoming a Muslim, you will give up things in your life, like you will not go clubbing, for example, you will quit drinking alcohol, you will quit eating pork. This is basically sacrifice for religion, right? In simple English terms. If you translate that into Arabic, you get one word, and that word is jihad. So that is literally what jihad is all about. It's not a holy war and waging war on America and killing all Americans. It's not really. It's something which is again taken to the extreme and followed by the extremists, but by true Islamic terms, jihad is literally something which you do, which I do, which everyone does, which you do probably on a day-to-day basis. We all sacrifice things on a day-to-day basis, right? You sacrifice things for your family's happiness, you sacrifice things for your happiness, right? Like if you want to become more healthy and you start going to the gym, and but you're someone that loves to eat desserts, right? And so you go to the gym and you come back home and you see a piece of cake lying on the table, you're not gonna to take it because now you want to start eating healthy. So that is literally jihad. You're sacrificing that for something that you want to achieve or something that you want to become, someone you want to become. So this is literally the meaning of jihad. It's not something which is like a holy war or nothing like that. It's something which everyone does on a day-to-day basis.
Oh, you're bringing up like not eating foods and maybe needing to exercise more, and I'm feeling like, oh, I need more jihad in my life because I could be a lot healthier if I would give up some certain things, you know.
Someone could really take that sentence out of context and make your life a lot more miserable.
Yeah. Lucas Land says he needs more jihad in his life. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, hopefully they'll listen to the whole episode, and understand what I'm saying. I'm saying, because I gave them 2 sound bites now that they can use against me, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. The other thing, you know, we're not going to get into all of the nitty gritty about all of the different branches of Islam, because, you know, as we were talking about before we were recording, it's really complicated. And it's I think, you know, as Christians, you know, I'm a Christian, I'm a Mennonite, and so that's a branch of Christianity. Christianity has so many, different versions of Christianity that come from all, you know, so many hundreds and hundreds of years of change and growing, and, you know, people having different interpretations and different ideas and different movements and everything. And it's a little bit silly for people to think that Islam is any different, right? Right. Like there's a lot, you know, you're sharing some basic ideas for people about what Islam is and what Muslims believe, but it's also complicated, right? I mean, just the fact that you were sharing that you grew up in Saudi Arabia, but you don't speak Arabic very well. Right. And, you know, some of those things that I would not have thought, I would have assumed you spoke Arabic because you grew up in Saudi Arabia. I mean, there's a lot of complexity there. And I just want to encourage people to recognize that, you know, and don't expect, don't expect Ammar to represent, or whoever you talk to represent all of Islam. And that's maybe an area where people can learn more, if they're interested, because it's very interesting, but I still have a hard time. I've read a little bit, for example, the two major divisions in Islam are between Sunni and Shia.
Right.
If you asked me to define it, I've read about it, I've studied it a little bit, but if I had to define it right now, I would not be able to. There's a complicated history there.
I have literally no idea what. I know about the different sects, but I have no idea what. I'm a Sunni, so I don't know what Shia means. Oh, like how does Shia differ from Sunnism? You know, I have no idea, because if I'm not mistaken, the main group is Sunnis. I think they're the majority, if I'm not mistaken. But it's very complex, you know, and and the very topic of branches of Islam is complex in and of itself, because if you consider Sunnis, right? Sunnis are divided into 4 different school of thoughts as well. So there are branches within that as well. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a very complex topic, and there are a lot of technicalities involved, so which is why I said that I'm not really knowledgeable about it. But what I will do is I will try to find a video that talks about this, and I will send it to you so you could link it in the show notes so your listeners can watch it afterwards.
That would be great.
Maybe
I'll finally remember too.
Right, because I actually spoke to a friend of mine, and I told him do you have something which I could talk about on the podcast about this topic? And he told me he will get back to me with a video or some article or something, but he's yet to do so. So once he does, I will let you know for sure. And then
that would be great. Yeah.
That's the prayer, by the way. They do it in
we talked about this before we started the episode. You're in Saudi Arabia, and it's time for
this is the evening prayer.
This is the evening prayer. Okay. And so that would be kind of our signal to wrap up.
Yeah, for sure. But
I think that's great.
yeah, but actually, this in Saudi Arabia, this is how the 5 prayers are done. So what you're hearing right now is actually the call to prayer, which is basically is the time to announce to people that it is time to pray, right? Because we have set times to pray, and maybe after like 5 to 10 minutes after this, there will be another call to prayer where we will go to the mosque and then we will start praying. And
okay.
yeah, so you can see from now how when you have these call to prayers on loudspeakers and for everyone to hear, it's really hard to miss it, when you're living in Saudi
Right.
Arabia. But when you live in the West or some other country where this is not done, I think you probably find it difficult to
you need
pray.
an alarm
Exactly.
on your phone or something to remind you.
Which is why people find it, I think, taboo that we're praying 5 times a day, or people find it weird or find it too much to pray, when it's really, having lived in Saudi my whole life, it's really not the case,
Yeah, this is every day.
Yeah.
Well, do you have time to do our last 2 things?
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so I like to wrap up with going out and going deeper. Going out, an action, and then going deeper, something, maybe a resource or something that people can go deeper.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I'll give mine, and then if you want to think of your recommendations, you can do that. My going out, going back to getting to know people. Like I said, I live in Waco, Texas, and we have a mosque here. More than likely, if you're in a populated area in the U.S., you have a mosque. So visit the mosque. One of my favorite things from studying theology in college was the class that we were in required us to visit different places. So we visited a synagogue, we visited a Buddhist temple, and we visited a mosque. And I was living in Chicago when 9/11 happened. And after that, I remember going to visit a mosque to try and get to know my neighbors because of everything that was going on, and wanting to support them, help them to know that they weren't alone, that people, not everybody was feeling anti-Muslim sentiment, but and I've always been very welcomed and loved getting to know people. So it's a recommendation, and it's also my commitment that I'm going to visit my mosque here in Waco. For going deeper, I'm excited to get links from Ammar for myself to go deeper. And so I'm really looking forward to that. I feel like I don't have a lot to add to going deeper because there's so much I need to learn. So, Ammar, for you, what are your 2 things, going out and going deeper?
Well, my going out would be, because you already mentioned the visiting the mosque part, I would really love if people can just spend time. If approaching a Muslim is too much and too nerve-wracking to do, because approaching strangers is really a nerve-wracking thing to do for most people, I would really love it if people just spend 10 minutes out of their day really just Googling what the mosques in Saudi Arabia are like, and what Makkah is like, what Medina is like, and really gives you a sense of, it shatters so many stereotypes, I would say, because my friends, when they have seen what the mosques are like in Makkah and Medina, they were really surprised, so I would love if people would do that. And my going deeper would be in the United States, in Texas. There is a Islamic thought leader by the name of Numan Ali Khan, and I will probably link his pages. I will send it to you, Lucas, so you can.
Okay.
I think he is from Texas. He lives in Texas, and he has an institute called the Bayina Institute in Texas. And that he has tons of videos online where he talks about what Islam is about. And if you guys really feel inspired to learn about the religion, just search up his name on YouTube and start watching his videos. And there is also someone called Umar Sulaiman. He's an imam, basically a Islam imam, basically a leader in the community, Islamic leader. And I think he's also from Texas, right? So so Imam Umar Sulaiman is actually more into the bridging of religions, like bringing religions together and really harmonizing people from different religions. Like he has conversations with Christian. What is it? Christian? Is it Christian priests? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, priest or pastor, depends on the
pastors, yes,
the branch.
Yeah. So he has conversations with religious leaders from all around the world, and his main aim is to bridge the gap and make peace between religions, and get them living and coexisting peacefully. While Noman Ali Khan is more of the issues within the religion, educating the Muslims themselves. So both of these people are excellent resources to learn more about what Islam really is and what it stands for. I will definitely send you the link, so you can link it down in the show notes and you can probably read them too. And yeah, they do a much better job than what I just did. Yeah. So, yeah.
Oh, that's great. No, that'll be fantastic. And shout out to your podcast if you want to go ahead and plug Let's Agree to Disagree.
Right. So my podcast is called Let's Agree to Disagree. It's basically you could call it the sister podcast of We Don't Talk About That. And we stand for the same thing, which is really having hard conversations and talking to more people and really getting the other perspective, and not just living through life with your own vision and with your own perspective, but rather talking with people that you disagree with, that you have a difference of opinion with, because we believe that in order to live peacefully and in harmony, you need to be able to coexist with others, and the key to coexisting with others is to understand where they come from, and the key to understanding where they come from is to talk and have these conversations with them. So this is basically what my podcast is about. Feel free to check it out in any standard podcast streaming platform. It is called Let's Agree to Disagree, LET'(S), Agree to Disagree, and you can find me on Instagram, which is the _ Let's Agree to Disagree. Follow me on there. We'll probably start. The new season starts next week, hopefully. So yeah, tons to check out. Thank you so much for having me, Lucas. And it's been an absolute pleasure, and I really, really enjoyed our conversations, and I'm really glad I met you. And thank you for reaching out.
Yeah, definitely. So, Ammar, how would you say goodbye? What's a traditional kind of Islamic greeting to say when you say goodbye?
Well, the Islamic greeting, you can say Assalamu alaikum, which is basically peace, and the other person would reply with Wa alaikum salam, which is peace be upon to you as well. And I have to mention,
so it works for hi and goodbye.
For hi and goodbye both. And I have to mention the word Islam itself means peace. So when you have a religion which translates to the word peace, it's really hard to have people blowing up. It's really hard to have the religion teaching other people to be violent and extremist and that sort of thing. So yeah, I forgot to add that in. But yeah, if you want to say goodbye, you can just say Assalamu alaikum, and we reply with Wa alaikum salam.
Alaikum salam.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Ammar. This was fun.
Thank you so much. You too.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram with the handle @WDTAT Podcast. You can also rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks to Hope Fellowship Mennonite Church for their generous support of the podcast. Also, many thanks to Neil Curran and Infielder for the use of their music. You can find more of their music online at infielder.bandcamp.com. Until next time, keep showing up and keep being brave.
What are you gonna do?
Que le vaya bien.
A That's Not Canon Productions podcast.